Hey, welcome to the Prep Pastors Podcast show. This is, let's see here. We have the real Kirk joining us via a fantastic photo, which you all can see. And as soon as
an online phone call.
And an online phone call. So there he is. Alrighty. I'm trying to.
What's up, everybody?
What up, what up? I'm trying to jump on over.
I'm way prettier. I'm way prettier when it's just.
It is a pretty photo. It's got Jack Carr's crossed axes, tomahawks on there.
Gotta love that. It's my favorite hat. That was a Valentine's Day gift from my bride. She nailed Valentine's Day this year for sure.
Nice. All right, I got the live notice. Let me pop over there so I can watch those Rooshkis. They like to get in there and mess with us. So if you're following us on Facebook, the Facebook responses are we get them. We just can't tell who you are. So if you want your name to be mentioned on the show because you're making a public post by commenting, you may as well tell us your name too, so we can, address you appropriately.
Yeah, please tell us who you are and where you're watching from.
Yeah, I like that too, especially if you're watching from somewhere outside of our country or in some weird communist country like Oregon. Let us know that.
Yeah.
That'd be good for us to know.
It's the People's Republic of Oregon. Come on, man.
People's Republic. Right. Yeah, it's hard to keep all those communist states straight.
The People's Republic Communist Community of the West Coast. Chaz? I don't know.
Chaz? Is it a Chaz?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the whole West Coast is a Chaz at this point.
I'm trying to figure out how to mute that on my phone. I'm having difficulties.
I wish I could mute a Chaz. That'd be great.
Right?
Teach me how to mute the Chaz.
I don't know if there's a way to do it. Oh my goodness.
Did you have a good week this week, Phil? How's prepping in Alaska going? You guys doing well?
I tried to cut my finger off, so that was an enjoyable experience.
So you got to practice
stop
first aid
saying
skills. You got to bust into your fish mock.
Yeah, so I did it at one of the new locations where we're everything's kind of still in boxes and we're not real sure where stuff is. The funny part of it is that it was a pretty significant cut. It looks small. I'm showing you the camera right now. It looks kind of small. I got some really cool bandage on here, but I stuck a 20-inch cake knife so far into my finger, slipping while pushing and sawing on a nice serrated cake blade.
So you tickled the bone.
I got in there so far it was hard to get it out.
Oh,
so yeah, I mean, not a huge amount into the nail bed, just like maybe 1/8 of an inch right from the side. And so that was causing some difficulty. And then possibly there was some bone action going. I don't know. It hurt a lot. And it was, again, difficult to get the knife out. Like my finger wanted to come with it. So while I was standing there weak-kneed over the sink, running some cold water over it, getting ready to get, on top of bleeding and whatnot, you try to flush your wound first. I kind of shouted to the family who was 20 feet away watching TV that I needed some medical assistance and could you go get the supplies for stoppage of bleeding. And my son didn't skip a beat, continued watching television. My wife, after the third request, walked upstairs nonchalant, rather slow, took what felt like an hour to come back and gave me a small Band-Aid and went back to watching TV. So apparently I didn't articulate well enough or scream loud enough that it was a serious event. So
that sounds like you're loved and supported and.
So the moral of that is, or the lesson to be learned is that you need to scream and cry like like it really hurts, so people take it serious.
I'm gonna mute you for just a second.
So anyway, that was my fun part of we started the week. I think that was Monday, and so it's been all week of not being able to type and things like that. Even just prepping for the show. We're late today because of me. I had a hard time getting the stuff ready, even though it really isn't that hard. It just everything's moving slow when your finger hurts and is wrapped up, and can't feel what keys I'm pushing. So I'm a really bad keyboard warrior right now. Yeah, so there's that. But anyway, a lot happened in the world today. We did not want to miss the show. We definitely wanted to get on here and talk about what's happening in the world, and trying to figure out why I'm out of frame. There we go. We got to find my seating position and then sit still. Sitting still is a hard thing. The real Kirk is doing a really good job of sitting still on this scene. You haven't moved at all.
I'm a professional sitter stiller.
Yeah. Well, you're doing well with the photograph. So I have some cool stuff for the bunker. If you're hanging out long enough to make it to the bunker, I have some cool pew-pews to show off today. One is rather rare, and the other is a matching, almost as rare. Unfortunately, the real Kirk will only get to hear them, although I don't know that I'll actually pew them. I probably won't actually pew them, since my studio's in an office setting. That'd be maybe a bad call, and they're not all that silent. They don't have hearing protection built onto them. They're rather loud. But one is
we'll all be able to have hearing protection built onto them. In fact, we could even talk about what's going on down in Texas right now.
It's maybe a good segue. Texas is doing stuff that Montana's been doing for a long time. What was the other state that kind of, was it New Hampshire or?
I don't know. I didn't know there was another state besides Texas is going pretty hard. They've got, Montana tried to do it, but they didn't file any federal lawsuits to make it happen. But
okay.
And now the ATF is trying to have the lawsuit dismissed, so that they don't have to actually fight things in court.
Well, gosh, who was it? They settled with one of the machine gun guys, the key card machine gun guy. And then one of the other machine gun, or was it bump stocks? Someone settled out of court on one of the 2A cases this week, which means we don't get a ruling. But the ATF had been, I wouldn't say prosecuting, because what they're really doing was persecuting.
Persecution is the right
to
word.
The point where they just ran out of steam and took the settlement to move on. Just like a lot of January 6th people have at this point of being incarcerated without trial unfairly and illegally for coming up on 2 years. A lot are just taking the settlement to have a life, right?
Yeah, I was just really glad that that one. I mean, that was such a gigantic pile of bullcrap. That was so egregious that you would take a guy who's literally just etching a design into a piece of metal,
right?
And treating him like he was an international arms dealer.
One of those guys
massive.
Did lose their case and was supposed to go up for sentencing this week.
Oh, really?
Which one? I should look it up. Which one was that one?
Yeah,
if somebody knows, go ahead and comment here right now. We have some pretty smart people that listen to the show, and they actually remember some of this. I'm going to have a hard time finding it on Google because Google. But anyway, he was supposed to go in for sentencing, and he killed himself instead. So found guilty, they were going to throw him into federal prison, and he felt like he had no other choice. And that is a place that you do come to. I can understand that. It's understandable why someone would make the choice that he did. I don't
Right.
love suicide. I don't think it's a good idea. It's not great, but this is one of those few cases where I would say maybe was warranted. When you can't win, I'm not real happy with,
I just don't understand why.
I think there's better ways to do it. Yeah.
At this point, if you're going to do it, you should take bad guys with you.
I'm with you there. And I think that the video that I saw that was explaining that basically said the same thing, and he took it down.
Oh, wow.
So I can't find.
Where it got. or it got
No,
taken down.
he put a video of. I decided to take that down because of what I said. So I did catch that, but now I can't find who it was. so I apologize for bringing up something that I can't follow through on. But the point being, the feds, and by feds we mean anyone getting money from three-letter agencies, the AFT and the goofy
Right.
wheelchair accountants with guns, and all those guys, they are absolutely the enemy. They have violated any oath that they probably didn't take serious in the first place. They absolutely do not support and defend the Constitution. They attack those who do. They fall into the category of the other keyword people talk about, violating an oath, and they call them a certain thing that ends up OBers. So if you know what that is, it's great. And if you don't, but that's one of those things where you say that now on the air and you get yanked. So
And you get yanked.
So I'll try to remember not to.
Yeah. I mean, I figure we've only got about a dozen shows left, maybe, before one of us says something that gets us permanently shot down off of the social medias.
It's very possible, and I won't apologize. So
No, I'm not going to apologize either. The bottom line is we should have freedom of speech, and we should be able to say what we want to say. And these purveyors of thought, the thought police are actively making sure that we cannot.
And to be honest, there are platforms where we do have that, and we just need to figure out how to get onto them. The software we're using right this second does not have that ability, and but that's not to mean that we can't work to find a way to do it, because we can. So and obviously once we get removed from the main two platforms that we stream to right now, there'll be more of a necessity to do the legwork and the effort to make that happen. But this is still easy, and a whole lot of you guys just have not kicked your habit yet, and you're still in the same places. So
yeah, well, I felt like for years, and a lot of other people do too, I felt like I was supposed to be a missionary to social media, and I was going to be here until they threw me out, like being a missionary to other places in the world.
Right.
They can't. It's a lot more difficult for them to kill me than if I was a missionary in China or Turkey or Afghanistan. But they can certainly silence me, which they've actively done in the past.
Right. And becoming less and less true as we find that certain entities, three-letter entities, are having less of a problem in doing the pew-pews against the good guys. And some of the the sniffer-in-chief's followers are taking measures into their own hands. So that's one of the stories out of this week. If you haven't heard about this,
segue into that. Give us the story. I know right where you're going.
Yeah. So I could probably look it up. I think it's Wisconsin. No, was it Michigan or Wisconsin? I don't remember the state, Michigan or Wisconsin.
One of them.
There was some sort of young persons meeting late at night. I don't get the impression it was at a bar or something. It talked about some sort of a dance off. So I don't know. I didn't know people still threw cardboard on the ground and did break dancing, but it was something like that in the streets. It became political in some way, and someone was perceived as being a ultra-conservative MAGA Republican, he was called, and that was reason enough for one of the other, actually not young persons who was there. I believe he was late 30s, a millennial.
Late 30s.
Late 30s millennial. And he felt that he needed to obey his president and threatened the young man's life, who promptly started running away. Actually talked to his mother on the phone saying, I do you know who this person is? I don't understand what's going on. They've yelled and persecuted me and said terrible things and said they're going to kill me. I'm running for my life. And shortly later, the man was run down by a car. So the Democrat, the liberal, the Biden supporter,
and Biden and make no mistake, Biden is as complicit in that man's murder than the guy who
we all but told him to do it. In the famous red fascist speech, the Nazi rally, he all but told his supporters to do this. And they're answering. So that actually happened twice this week. So almost the same story. 2 times in our country that we know of that made national news. Of course, national news, I don't know what news you listen to. I get most of mine from Daily Wire and other conservative sources, Forbes even. But yeah, I'm sure it did actually make MSNBC and some of the other fake news networks. They reported it, of course, not necessarily totally truthful. They were very sympathetic. But he won his bail hearing this week, saying it would ruin his life if he was not able to get released on bail. Of course, we have a liberal judge, a liberal prosecutor, and all of those liberals are following the Nazi in chief, who has instructed them to take out ultra extremists and have labeled those with conservative values as extremist terrorists. And we'll see how the court case goes, but he's walking free today, having murdered someone for their political opinions and beliefs, simply for sharing them. Not exactly for doing anything or acting on them, but for not agreeing with a political belief, being accused of being a ultra-conservative, fleeing for his life, and then run down on the street. So the police did not have to search for the guy. He called the police after fleeing the scene. It was a hit and run. He ran over the guy and then drove home. While he was driving home, he called the police. The police said, well, you need to go back to the scene, of course. Oh, okay. Then he drove back to the scene where he was arrested. He still holds that he did nothing wrong, that he removed a violent extremist and his violence was justified.
Right.
To which I would say, this is why we carry guns.
Oh, 100%. This is why you don't leave the house without a self-defense tool. Bottom line,
at all times, we are being targeted.
These instances are going to become more and more prevalent. There's no question about it. And for anybody who thinks that's hyperbole listen, 2 in 1 week. Okay, that's bananas. Okay?
And it's only been, 2 weeks since, maybe 2 or 3 weeks since the famous Nazi speech? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe 3.
Oh.
Yeah, the crazy Darth Biden speech with the first order stuff. Like, he might as well have just had new flags hanging back there.
Yeah. Yep. It's time. So, there's that in our country.
Did you watch any of the crazy 60 Minutes interview? Which, I just think that's fun that's even still a thing.
Yeah, I don't watch 60 Minutes. Hysterical. Who was it?
But did you listen to Shapiro or anybody kind of break that down? It was
the Imperial March speech.
No. This was this week. He got on 60 Minutes this last weekend and just made an absolute clown of himself. The guy cannot come up. He cannot stick 2 coherent sentences together in a chain of thought. It's embarrassing. Everybody talked about how embarrassing it was to have Trump, to be president. You might not have liked what Trump had to say. You might not like the timbre of his voice, the way he's got that ultra thick New York millionaire, billionaire vibe about him. But at least the man could actually stick 2 thoughts together. And Biden just looks like an absolute dementia patient at this point.
Yeah, well, he is.
Yeah, I I can't believe they actually let him get in front of a camera like that. It was just bananas. And then he yet again, talking the rhetoric of he wouldn't stop until quote unquote assault weapons are banned, whatever those are. I don't even know what that is. And used his stupid, ridiculous joke again. Well, if the deer that you're hunting are wearing Kevlar vests, like, dude, this has nothing to do with deer, you gigantic asshat. This has everything to do with standing up to tyrants like you.
Yeah, and let's talk about Kevlar. I mean, we don't call anything Kevlar anymore. There's it's just, come on, that's
right.
From the 80s, the 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. I'll be wearing my vest also. So.
Yeah, I mean, the guy, it's just madness. But yeah, he and then I love it. He is just crazy enough that he'll turn around when somebody starts yelling questions at him. Like he's clearly done with his speech. He shouldn't take a single question. And then somebody's like,
they can't control him.
Why is the border in such crisis, Mr. President? Why is it, the worst numbers that we've ever seen under your watch? What are you going to do about it? And he actually turned around and engaged. And when he did, he just made himself look like an absolute fool. He tried to throw it onto Venezuela. He tried to throw it onto other countries are the problem. And walk back to the podium. He never should have walked back to the podium. He should have just left the room and pretended like he never heard the guy. But it was just an absolute farce. So twice this week, he has made just a colossal fool of himself.
Yeah. Well, I hear the performance over at the ritualistic burying of the Queen wasn't all that great either. But
oh yeah, did he? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know details. I really don't follow it. I don't want to, need to. You know what I mean? It's all bad.
Right.
I'm too busy hunting down the last of the supplies, which is what we would say to you. Pay attention to what's happening in the world. Yes, the Democrats and the liberals absolutely want you dead. They're not being held accountable when they decide to do so. Heaven forbid you defend yourself like Kyle Rittenhouse, and they will put you through the ringer and absolutely do everything they can to ruin your life. You are better off
100%.
Not going to court. You are better off not taking your chances in the justice system. You're better off taking your chances in the street.
No, man. I
fight it out in the street.
I don't think they're too terribly far. I mean,
there is no such thing as an honest, fair trial.
But
well, and let's be honest.
Yeah,
Gunfight insurance is a good idea. You and I both are whatever elite members, USCCA. But make no mistake about it. I don't believe for a single second that they're actually going to stand by me unless they want to.
I mean,
there's so many outs.
In fact, actually, speaking of USCCA, like if any of our viewers out there wanted to feel particularly generous, and there's an instructor certification class coming up next month near where I live. I would absolutely love to take, but I don't have an extra $500 floating around. So if anybody just
plus
out
the
there,
ammo,
wanted to bless, it's a 1 hour range time. It's all class. It's all classroom stuff. But I would love, and I love that USCCA is doing that because it's freeing people from having to go to the absolute worthless, corrupt NRA to get certifications like that. Because there's a lot of ranges. And if you do not have an NRA instructor, you cannot be a range officer. You cannot do these things. But I refuse to give them $1 ever again.
I let my RSO certification lapse and expire. I don't think I would ever bother to renew it. If I ever decided to work at a range again, I maybe would let them pay for it, but I would encourage them to do something different. The reason why that happens is that nonprofit ranges primarily get their insurance through the NRA. They're one of the only places where you can get gun range, shooting range insurance, liability insurance. And so one of the requirements to have insurance with them is that you have NRA certified range safety officers. But there are some things like what Kirk is saying that kind of trump, and because they're more, what would you say, higher level, of course. And USCCA is filling the gap and giving us some better options. And USCCA is a great organization. I would not give them money monthly. I don't take any discounts. I give them full price. I've been doing it for years. I will continue to do it. I'm not going to cancel them. But I also know there's outs there. And if you are defending, if you are using your firearm in something that is considered a crime, and more these days, everything you do is considered a crime because they're making everything illegal. They don't have to pay for your defense or cover you with their insurance if they determine that you did actually commit the crime you are accused of. They only protect you in self-defense cases where you legally were allowed to carry and legally defended yourself within the laws of where you were located. So good luck with that.
So good luck with that. Exactly right.
And again, they have the power to choose, and they want to save face too, because they don't want guys like us or more prominent than us, because John Lovell supports them. Probably Clinton Heidi Smith support them, right? I mean, we've heard a lot of people support them. If one of those guys says, hey, they dropped the ball, they hung some guy out to dry, they're going to lose a lot of business. Yeah. So they will make a business decision. But if
most of the 2A news channels that I watch, Guns and Gadgets,
they're all pushing USCCA now.
Scholar, they're all with USCCA.
Donut,
now.
I think Donut was the other day. He must be getting money.
Donut had a Donut.
Donut only pushes stuff that he gets money for. We're all not naive about that. Donut, you're such a shiller.
Donut looks a little rough these days.
Yeah, he does.
So okay, let's talk a little bit about the fact that Russia called up 300,000 reservists. Putin called it a partial mobilization.
Correct.
Except I don't really know how many more reservists they could possibly have than that. I know that there are a lot of.
I don't know how the reserve system works in Russia. So let's not forget, in places like Israel, every able body is a reservist, right?
Sure.
Every person who physically can serve has served and then goes into reserves.
Well, I know that. Let's look at it like this: the day the announcement came out,
people started fleeing.
You could not buy a one-way ticket out of Russia. There was absolutely 100%. Every flight was booked.
Yeah.
People were. I mean, the rats were jumping from the ship.
Yeah.
They knew what was going on. A day and a half later, there were no flights leaving Russia anymore. Putin had locked the country down, saying, "You are not leaving. You are serving. Get your butt in your uniform. Let's go."
Which I agree. That's the call to make. You're either part of your country or you're not. Support your country.
Right.
If Russia is going to, go take out this Zelensky, who's an absolute shitbag, we don't support the war in any way. It's hard for me to side with Russia, hardly at all in any way. I'm just saying, as a countryman, as a nationalist, you support the country you're in, and if your country's going to war, you're going to war. It's not like our country. Well, in some ways, it is a lot like our country, actually, because the rich don't serve or serve in any real capacity. Only the poor, the middle class, and usually our no class, our illegal, not legal citizens, are immigrants. They serve because it's a path to citizenship. So,
I got to tell you, that was one of the most beautiful things about. That a few years ago I got to go down to Lackland Air Force Base and watch a BMT graduation, and which to this day is one of the greatest honors I've ever been given, is to get to be there to witness that.
I'd like to see one.
You did see one.
I didn't really see it. I was in the parade field, so it's not the same.
You were looking at the back of the head in front of you. But I'll say that one of the most beautiful pieces of the ceremony was the men and women, and there was about 12 of them,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe more, maybe upwards of 20, but at least 12 that were presented with their citizenships and took their oath on the parade ground right there in front of us. And I thought, whoa, this is cool. So like they graduated BMT and received their citizenship on the same day.
I don't know how that
think
works. You're
that's
supposed to
absolutely
serve 3 years honorably.
Well, maybe they were already in process and finalization before they joined up or something. I don't know.
Well, and rules change all the time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, if you want to gain an appreciation for your country, talk to someone who's immigrated here and gone through the process and gotten their citizenship and earned it and studied our history and took the test and spoke the language and did the steps.
Yep.
They love this country. Good example, Steven Crowder.
Yeah.
He's an immigrant. He wasn't born here. He loves this country. He knows where he came from. He is glad to be here. You hear it 4 days a week.
Absolutely. Yep.
I think he's probably got red, white, and blue tattoos. Like he's dead serious, loves this country. That's what we want. We want people like that to come here.
Well, you even look at the torturous education that he received,
Sure. I mean, he very well could have had a shop teacher with, water balloon, or what do you call them? Watermelon boobies. The male shop teacher in Canada with watermelon boobies that can't do her job or his job and is getting disability now for not being able to do his job because he filled his chest with water balloons and
because he's living his true self.
What a right is wrong and wrong is right and upside down. That there's some biblical context there.
Isn't that what Scripture told us would happen in the end times? They would call
absolutely
good evil and evil good. That there would be an absolute flipping of the coin.
The only solution to that is to call out evil where it is shown, to refuse to back down, to stand up for what is right, to have a backbone, and refuse to play along. Stop folding, ceding ground, backing up.
Yep.
You don't have to be a freedom fighter to go around shooting everybody in the face. You just have to stop getting along. Stop trying to get along with those who are not interested in getting along with you. There is no compromise. It is a very one-sided compromise. You cannot get along with people who only force you to compromise. And you cannot compromise beyond your faith and your beliefs and your ethics, or you are worth nothing yourself. Don't become lukewarm simply because your evil enemy refuses to cede ground.
Well, and Jesus calls us to walk in the tension, right? I mean, so we have to walk in the tension. He's called us to love our enemies and do good to them. He's called us to love our enemies and pray for them. He has not called us to love our enemies and capitulate.
We do not have to accept and go along with.
Right. The new definition of the word tolerance, which means I endorse, support, and validate you. Tolerance used to mean we disagree, but we tolerate each other. Like,
it's a live, let live concept.
It's a live, let live concept. But now tolerance means, that I must
not just acceptance, but affirmation and support.
Yeah.
And that could not be further from the truth.
Correct. And so at that point, something must change and something must be, Jesus did not call us to capitulate to evil.
Right.
He called us to, I can love and pray for and desperately hope that a radicalized Muslim finds Jesus, and they do, and they are. I mean, there are radicalized Muslims.
There's no such thing as a non-radicalized Muslim. There's confused.
But
there's not true believers.
Don't go down that rabbit hole. Hold on. Let me get my point out. But they are absolutely waking up in the middle of the night, having met Jesus in dreams. Like it's happening. Revival is happening in the Middle East, in Afghanistan. The number one, the fastest growing church in the world is in Iran. They're literally, old women are having dreams, meeting Jesus, and bringing their family to the Lord. Like it's happening. Their church is growing faster than the church in America could even dream of right now. We are so post-Christianity, okay? But so my point is that I can love and care for and desperately pray that a radicalized Muslim comes to know Jesus without endorsing his religion, without capitulating to their honor killing system, without validating the fact that they enslave and abuse children,
mutilate and butcher,
like
and
exactly. So and if we're trying to get kicked off of YouTube, we're I'm doing a pretty darn good job of laying the groundwork tonight.
Okay. So to bring it back home to what should people do in our country right now, what's happening in the world, and what should you do about it? Again, arm yourself.
Yep.
Be prepared.
100%.
Did you see Gareth Elkins' post today? Does he post anywhere off of Facebook? Because I can't barely get on there and see it.
Yes. You can go to GarethElkins.com.
Does he put everything on there also?
And I believe everything is a blog entry. Every time, all those posts go to there as well.
Okay.
I did not see it. Tell me about it, or pull it up and read it.
Oh,
I'm
well,
sure
I can't.
It's absolutely fantastic.
I don't have the avenue to do that here. I have a proxy and I have a way to worm my way into the Book of Faces, and I don't have any of those things near me right now. But
so give me the gist. What did he say?
Well, it was just kind of what we're talking about. It was talking about the downfall of the church in America, and that essentially compromising to wokeness in the evangelical movement is absolutely killing the church in this country, and he's 100% correct. He did not pull punches, and he had some good scriptural references. And so if you're unfamiliar with who we're talking about, it's Gareth Wilkins. Elkins. Gareth Elkins, GarrisElkins. And I think it's, is it GarrisElkins.com, or do you know? That I can look up.
You can go and you can follow him on Facebook. You can't, I think he's maxed out his friends load.
I would just say avoid the Book of Faces as much as you can. So GarrisElkins.com. I'm going to go there right now and see if I can find the blog.
It might be O-N. It's not. I'm not sure.
It's not. GarrisElkins.com. So okay. September 23rd. That's today. Here it is. Though it was actually a post from yesterday. I'll just go ahead and read it. So Mr. Elkins titles this. Was September 22nd. It's under the terms of prophetic, and it says, "Eyes wide open." For some reason, many within the church think the New Testament represents a positive cuddle fest. They have been taught a cinematic version of a white European Jesus who seems to levitate across culture, never raising his voice or addressing error. Their illusion about reality is uncomfortably interrupted by the writings of the early apostles.
Yeah.
Paul told church leaders to expel people from their fellowship who were living in sin or creating division. John wrote the book of Revelation, offering an apocalyptic forecast of the future. And Peter, the redeemed redneck fisherman who refused to hold back the punches of truth, wrote some challenging words himself. Peter had strong words to share about those who spoke in God's name, especially those who claimed to be prophets. Prophecy is not limited to the words of hope or stark warnings. It can devolve in another direction to become a dismal of anything negative that turns our attention away from the harsh realities of life. That kind of teaching can become a lopsided, mushy love fest of faith without consequence. Peter described those who mishandled the truth in this way, but there were also false prophets among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. They will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the sovereign Lord who bought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves. Many will follow their depraved conduct, and will bring the way of truth into disrepute. That comes from 2 Peter 2. Peter refused to be warm and fuzzy when it came to such matters. He called out deceivers. He said they are like unreasoning animals, creatures of instinct, born only to be caught and destroyed. And like animals, they too will perish. They will be paid back with harm for the harm they have done. That's verses 12 and 13. Peter wrote these words around 67 years after Christ's death, shortly before he was executed himself. Peter warned the church of his day, and he warns us in our present context of what can happen to a life of faith without truth and consequence. He said, "Therefore, dear friends, since you have been forewarned, be on guard, so that you may not be carried away by the error of the lawless, and fall from your secure position." That's 2 Peter 3:17. We are living in a significant time of transition, Garris writes, not just within the culture, but within the church. Examine what is being offered to you as truth. Consider the history and truth expressed in Scripture before you make life-altering decisions. The church has been this way before. We must walk with our eyes wide open, allowing both truth and history to illuminate our path, and we will suffer the consequence of our errors. So Garris is great, and he's been kind of coming out of his shell, I think, over the last year or two. We've known him to be this person, this prophet, for a long time, but he's hesitated to make these posts publicly, except on exception, right? I think probably when the Holy Spirit was beating him over the head. I would say it's more normative now. Maybe he's come out of his shell. I don't know. Maybe he's just no longer cares about the consequences, because there are consequences for a pastor or a prophet to make such a post.
Yep.
So you felt him, I felt him.
You know, Garris is definitely the epitome of, I can't wait to get old enough to say whatever the hell I want, and he's there. Like he's gotten to that place. He's absolutely 100% gotten to the season of life where he is retired, he is financially stable, his books are doing well enough that he does not need Foursquare to pat him on the head any longer.
Yeah.
He has, relinquished or been removed from the places of authority that he had.
More the latter. So within our movement, and I won't say the name you name dropped. Within our movement, we have people in positions of not just.
Did I say Foursquare? I meant the F word. Sorry, my bad. I apologize.
I think I'm renewing my license this week, so I should
have said F word, and I didn't.
Said the F word.
I'm sorry.
So
they'll never get another $1 from me.
They won't. I guess you're done. Burn all the bridges. But to be fair, somebody packed the kindling and suspended the matches already, and it wasn't you.
Oh yeah.
So and it's actually the someone that I was getting ready to talk about. I was going to say we have corruption within our leadership. The very persons who Garris is warning in his prophetic wording. They are not just in positions of power and influence; they are in positions of authority where they have been placed.
And people might be asking, why is this, when we go off on this path? People might be asking, how is this relevant to preparedness? Because the church denominations are going to fall. in this season. Like we
This is
know
an
that they
undermining of the church, who should be your support, your backing, your community.
Your local community, your local church community, your local body of Christ is all you are going to be able to rely on to make sure that it is as strong as you can possibly make it be.
When it comes down to not doing something
right.
because of your faith, only people who share your faith and beliefs can stand with you.
Right.
And it's not fun to stand alone. So when it comes time to implant chips and, do all the things that we finally would actually recognize as, no, that's the end, that's the mark, we're not going to do that. Like, there's our line for sure.
Which Foursquare
you will be
Foursquare
standing
has
on your
made
own.
it abundantly clear they will absolutely bend over to the government for that. They'll be like, listen, if you don't get your chip, we don't expect our lawyers to come and rescue you. I mean, they've said that. So
it has been said.
That's not hyperbole.
No, you're right.
Hyperbole.
You're right. It has been said. It's been put in writing. It's been repeated in phone calls. The threats to the pastorship were very clear and repeated.
Yeah.
It's a tough failing. Well, and they're not failing. Well, they are, right? I mean, it's growing. Maybe not in the right places, but the Church of Evangelical Wokeness is alive and thriving in the I-5 corridor, and the next generation of millennials, I wouldn't even say it's millennials, it's the following generation after that, or whatever they're being called, that actually are seeking affirmation in a religious sense of recognition of a higher power, and that they're not really in charge of anything, which is not a millennial trait. They very much don't need God.
Absolutely.
So there is a younger generation that is just coming of age, and they are seeking out answers in the church, but they've been indoctrinated and raised under pronouns and this idea that males can have babies and you can choose your own gender, and all of that ridiculousness, things that are absolutely not true, and not just not true, but debase and vilify the family and the biblical model. There are churches that are just all too eager to gain those members.
Right.
And they believe that they can bring people to Christ by affirming sin and evilness. And that's what Garris is talking about here. And it's what you and I have been repeating. And, don't dip into the realm of lukewarmness to fill a chair, to fill a pew.
Yeah.
Don't, people need truth, and truth presented in love is far better than affirmation of sin.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to, stand on a street corner and call, pick all the twigs and stick out of other people's eyes. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who have come to you, who are seeking truth, who want to know, and you're watering it down because you think they won't accept the full blood.
Yep.
And you're wrong.
You're wrong.
People absolutely will.
100%.
God changes hearts.
They will, and they must.
And they must.
They will, and they must.
Yeah. So, are people falling aside? Are they losing their faith? Yes. Yes, I think they are. I think if you go to some church of woke, believe whatever you want, and affirm the culture of the day, I think you absolutely are walking away from God's teachings. You are absolutely committing sins and turning your back on Him. And the Bible's quite clear about what happens there. Is there not a path back? That's not what I'm saying at all. But you're walking a path directly away, and you're in the dangerous territory of leading His children astray. And that's not a place I would want to be in.
Well, and I'll say it like this: I commented on a post made by a pastor friend of mine today, who I really will let him remain nameless, and I won't reference his denomination. But denomination can be a little legalistic and kind of just straight up mean. But his point was, isn't it sad when you watch someone who was taught the way they were supposed to go, raised in the church, and isn't it sad to watch them mock God and walk away from Jesus? And I just simply said, well, I'm finding more and more that there's a difference between taught and discipled, and that's the bottom line of it. There's a difference between taught and, people can know the truth and still be 12 inches from heaven, because if you don't transmit that knowledge into faith, that knowledge into transformation in your heart, then that knowledge does you no good whatsoever. It doesn't become wisdom until you apply the knowledge.
Okay, bring that home. Yeah. No.
Well, no. So the point of that, as far as landing that plane,
there you go.
Is the fact that we're going to see a generation of quote unquote believers.
Okay.
Okay. We'll give them the title that they
claim. Yeah.
Believer.
Which at that point puts you into the category of God will sort you out.
Right. James tells us that the devil's a believer.
Yeah.
And he knows who Jesus is, and he trembles, at his name. And so the bottom line is, if you do not transfer yourself from believer to disciple, that or allow the Holy Spirit to transfer you from believer to disciple.
Okay.
You'll cash in those chips. You'll toss all of it away when it's not convenient, when it's uncomfortable, when So I'll give you.
The point is, when the times get hard and when the challenge to commit sin that will draw you away from God, you have no foundation and roots that will hold fast in the hard times. That's what you're getting at.
Correct.
And I absolutely agree with that.
Exactly.
I'm with you there. Yeah. If you have no roots, the trees are easily washed away.
So today I spoke digitally. I hope I did. I submitted a video for my friend's funeral. My friend Philip Dowsett, he passed away early Sunday morning, and beat me to the throne room, and he won the race. But I'll say this: I talked about the context of the difference between sheep, shepherds, wolves, and sheepdogs. And you've probably heard, we've probably talked about the difference on the show. I probably took the illustration from the show. But the bottom line of it is they're in the realm, in the great field that is the kingdom of heaven. There is a shepherd. There is a good shepherd. He has appointed under shepherds to watch the flock. Those of us who call ourselves pastors, right? There are wolves that are actively trying to destroy the sheep, right, and devour the sheep. And then there's this other character that you don't see in Scripture, but we know to be true. Okay, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's the completion of wisdom. There's still a lot of other things that need to be said and done, right? So and I talked about today the supernatural transformation that happens when the God of the universe, the Good Shepherd, grabs a hold of a sheep that was probably plucked from the thorn bushes at the bottom of a ravine and has been through the worst of the worst, plucks them from those, and then supernaturally changes their DNA from being a sheep to being a sheepdog. Like, then you are now a protector of the flock. and gives you a new DNA, gives you a new identity in the field, and they're far between, and my friend was one of them. He was absolutely one of them. He was one of those men that would walk into a local congregation, and about the third time he went and he decided it was home, would sit down with the pastor, and he did it about a dozen times over the course of his life, and go, tell me about the security plan that is set in place to protect the children. And if you didn't have one, he'd pull a file out, and he'd be like, here, I have a security plan to help protect your children. I'd like to help you implement it. And then he was like, okay, so, then he would ask you a question about, is there a security team to protect the church, as
that
a
was
whole?
secondary.
If there's
Yeah.
not, if there's not, then I have a policy and procedures, and I will train them myself, because this guy was a warrior. He had 2 Purple Hearts in Vietnam, and got blown up twice. Asked to go back after the first time he got blown up. Right, lived the rest of his life with half of one kidney. Because of what he went through. So and this guy would show up and be like, okay, now that there are 2 security teams, a security plan and procedures over the children, and a security team, are there radios for children's ministry to communicate with the security team? Oh, there's not? I will buy them. Like, he would spend his own money and make sure that you had what you needed. He carried a gun to church every single time he walked in the door, because he stood ready to stop evil, in God's house. And it just an absolute sheepdog. Never felt called to be a shepherd, never felt called to be a pastor, but 100% a protector of the flock. And I'm proud to have known him and called him my brother. And so they laid him down today, and so I made a video, and I talked about that, and I'll probably, when I get permission from the family, I'll probably post that
in Patreon or
But I may re-record it, because I'll be honest with you, I did a pretty bad job, because I was either read it badly or completely fall apart, and I just had to read it badly, and my nephew filmed it for me today, or he hit record on the camera, let me say it that way. And when I got done speaking, he hit the record button and came over and gave me a big hug, so clearly I made an impression on that young man today. But the bottom line of it is, are you in a church that has sheepdogs? Or are you in a church like most of our churches on the I-5
Are you in a
corridor,
church that persecutes sheepdogs and alienates them, runs them out of the church?
Thank you. Yeah. Are you in a church that's run the sheepdog off, or are you in a church that has, allowed, given space for the sheepdog to fulfill its calling?
Right. Yeah. And a good hint or a good indicator is, how many law enforcement and combat veterans do you have attending your church?
There you go.
Or did you used to have some and they no longer attend there?
Right.
Those are good indicators that something is rotten and broken. And
when all of the law enforcement officers and combat veterans leave your church, it's time to leave your church.
Right. For no other reason, even if you don't understand the why or you disagree with the why, simply because it's no longer safe for you there.
No longer safe to be there. It's now the softest. It's now the softest of targets. Like, that's the bottom line.
Oh man, I was watching. There was a show. I don't know what it was. I was in the shower, so I didn't even. It was on autoplay, right? And I'm in the shower, and showers are a little difficult right now with the finger. But anyway, he was talking about what's a basic.
And with no hot water.
Yeah, well, I got hot water again. We had the hot water in the coach for a while, but so there's a basic level of competence and with a rifle and with weapons, and these are very appropriate things for us to be discussing today. This is a good segue. what is a minimum level of competence that people should have with defensive and offensive weapons, and to consider yourself safe, or maybe even appropriate to be protecting others or your family, or how much ammunition should you expend right now in training? Good questions.
Right.
I mean, a lot of us are saying,
Right.
I'm not sure how much I really want to, practice and spend, but, we've also attained a certain level of competency previously.
Right.
And
Right.
I sort of go with those who say it's a degrading skill. You can lose it, blah, blah, blah. I have never not gone to the range and within one or two magazines not really started to pick it all back up again. It does come back very quickly.
Yeah.
I disagree with it.
Yeah. There's a certain level of, it's like riding a bicycle, I mean, you might not be spectacular at it, but
right.
you're definitely going to be able to pedal it down the road without driving off the cliff.
And there's an argument for, the extremism of violence and violence of action wins, but that doesn't always win against those who are ready for it. It's like, I don't need to know a lot of karate because the average person doesn't know karate, right? Right up until you meet someone who does, and now you're in real trouble. So, those who actually do know how to fight, those who don't just speak and understand the language of violence, but live in it, and make no mistake, we have enemies who live in it. You're not going to win against them without a certain level of competency. And so he was just reading off basically. So Private Snuffy, who can't get his, boots laced up and doesn't ever even make it past 4 years in the military, right? We're talking about the total douchebags of the military.
Yeah.
They all have.
What does angry cops call it? Private Potato?
Oh, there's probably one too. Yeah. Potato Head or Potato. There's so many, Private Snuffy, or there's Airman Snuffy. There's lots of versions of them, because the reality is the military and has a lot of them. A solid 20 to 30% of our force is comprised of absolute shitbags. And more so now because the real people have left. So, but he's saying, they all can, with iron sights, take out targets at 100 meters, no problem. They can shoot under fire. They understand the concepts of cover and concealment. They understand how to operate in a basic fire team. There are some basic levels of competency which the average civilian who's never received formal training has no idea, and you're not going to get it from reading the Ranger Manual.
Correct.
You're not going to understand it. You have to go out there and do the time. Now, and then there are those who actually do this well and do it for a living, and that's not most law enforcement. But I'm talking your operators, your real dude, the real dudes.
Yeah.
They do this so effortlessly because they have shot not just tens of thousands of rounds, millions of rounds with intense focus and in a highly competitive career field that eats its own.
Yeah.
It is absolute survival of the fittest for a long time until you're finally in, and then they make each other's iron sharpening iron nonstop.
Yeah.
They speak it well. You just aren't going to last up against. I mean, I'm not going to, you're not going to last up against these guys. You need to be preparing. You need to be getting ready. There are more and more of those.
I would just say, I want to interject that you asked the question at the beginning of that statement, what's the basic level of proficiency? I think Clint Smith talks about the you have to own your distances. What are your distances? The length of your car.
Okay.
The length of the longest continuous space of your home. Okay. So the longest hallway or corridor of your home, whatever that.
You need to reliably be able to put rounds into the T-zone when they are holding on to your children.
There you go. Bing, bing, bang, boom, right there. So how long is your car? Do you drive a Prius, or do you drive, a giant F-350, long bed, extended cab, right? Do
In
or
the
do you drive, and then, do you live in a mansion or do you live in a single wide, right? I mean, so what are your distances? Figure them out. It takes a second. Go get a tape measure and go, okay, my car is this long from length, from stem to stern, right? And then you go set up a target on the range. Say your Prius is, 12 and a half feet long, right? Then you need to be able to work a target like a 9-to-5 job at 12 and a half feet.
I would say you need to be able to draw and put the first round with 100% accuracy in under, I would say at or under a second. Half a second would be better. You're in the point shooting category, not aiming. You're barely putting a front sight on target. You need to, until that is 100% natural, that you could do it with your eyes closed.
Yes.
And if you're not there, then you're not.
Agree.
Then keep practicing.
And
then do it with your weekend.
Right.
Offhand with what? If you can't do it with your little North American, don't carry a North American.
There you go. That's the bottom line. And then once you own the distance, the length of your car, then the longest length, the continuous space in your home.
Yeah.
Move that target out to, what is that? 40, 60 feet? What's your home like? Can you stand from your, and you need to be able to accurately see. Now you're talking less about being able to draw and fire inside of a second. Now you're talking about, can you move around a corner? Can you expose one eyeball and the barrel of your weapon and around a piece of cover on the range and accurately put shots in the tee box? Those two distances are the bare minimum of proficiency. And if you can master those two distances, we can have all kinds of conversations about other things when the time comes. You can, at that point, once you've done that, he'll take a class, go to Thunder Ranch, go see John Lovell, take a USCCA class, whatever works.
Mm-hmm.
But get there, get to the point where you can own those two fractional distances.
I think we live in the world of carbines and long guns now. Handguns handguns are for peacetime. When you're not expecting violence, when the chances are nothing's gonna happen, they're to get you to your rifle or your shotgun, right?
Absolutely.
I'd say if for inside the house stuff, get really good with a shotgun. That's my call.
Yeah.
You do your shotgun.
I think you're absolutely right.
It's time to be prepared to engage 5 to 10 targets who are moving on the outside of your home. So I say you need to build your range cards outside your home when they're knocking on your door. By the time they knock on your door, they already have at least 3 other points covered. Your back door, your side window. They do not knock on the door until they've already covered all the other exits. And are actively, they're drawing you to the front because they're actively working on entering from one of the other locations. So it's time to church up your entrances, church up your weak points, measure your tree lines. I say know your distances to your tree line so that you can, without thinking, put the dot or crosshairs in the right spot on a moving target. That's the level of proficiency I think it's time to be at. I absolutely expect violence on our own soil, whether it comes from within or from outside or both. It's coming. It's coming. And now that we are privileged to have some preview videos, we know that at least one of our federal idiots will be coming in wheelchairs. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Exactly right.
Where do you shoot a guy? Because I shoot for hips and dicks. Headshots are harder to make than pelvis shots. So, I don't know. With a wheelchair, I'm not sure a pelvis shot is a stopping shot. So
No, I don't think so. I think you got to go. I think you got to go to center mass or to the tee box for that situation.
well, and you need to have something. Here's the other thing too. I know that you love your 9 mils, and 9 mil today. Even my sacred Sig Sauer has abandoned me, and pretty much only sells 9mm now. If you're going to shoot a 9mm, you need to shoot a no bullshit 9mm that's going to penetrate level 3+ armor.
Oh yes,
no one is
absolutely.
coming to the
Better
door
have
without
it.
armor these days. The average idiot criminals have
Shit, the
armor.
criminals.
Everyone has
Yeah.
armor. You need to. It's time to get helmets. It's time to get armor. To which I would say, if you can't operate with a helmet, you're better off not having one. But
Yeah, don't allow it to give you any false sense of security. You know, I mean,
if you can't get your whole head
actually
out,
cover.
yeah, out into cover, then you're better off not having it. But
Right.
because they don't stop too much. Even mine, I've got a level 4 helmet front. It's 4 in the front and 3+ all the way, 3 all the way around the rest of the way. But armor's not perfect. They even the most expensive stuff, and I've got some pretty expensive stuff. It's multiple rounds are still a difficult game. But you need to get it. You need to get it for you. You need to get it for your loved ones. Steel plates are fine if you're not moving. If you think you're going to be doing anything other than hiding behind cover, you need to get something other than steel plates.
Yeah,
and
it's just so
do not
heavy.
compromise
if
on
it's all
cheap
you can
armor.
afford, if it's all you can afford, I mean, it's better to have that than nothing.
I disagree. Don't get it. You'll get a false sense of security. It'll slow you down. I'd say put your money into sandbags then. Build yourself a bunker for, or just, bug out. Don't be around. So if you're not prepared to play with those who are playing for keeps, if you're not prepared to do something when they're chasing you down with their cars,
right,
you just need to not be there. So those are your choices. You can be around what's happening, or you can go gray man now. Don't do what we're doing. Don't put on podcasts and shows, and don't poke the bear all over the Book of Faces, because it's the current battlefield in the culture war. Don't do any of those things. Don't make waves in your church. Don't pull your kids out of school, homeschool, get yourself to a remote homestead, get yourself to a free state. Bug out now. That's what I say. If you're not prepared to fight, bug out now.
Because
they're hunting us down.
I tell you, it breaks my heart.
Christian pastors were singled out and shot on the streets of Portland last year, or year before last, 2 years ago.
Yep.
Nobody heard anything about it. 2 different pastors hunted down for their beliefs and executed on the streets of Portland. Those who live there, I don't understand it. Why do you tolerate a police force, a district attorney, a judge, a judicial system that refuses to prosecute those who shoot and kill others for their religious beliefs?
I know why they're still there. The bottom line is money is a trap. Paul says it. We know that Scripture is money is a trap.
That's true.
When people have been conditioned to believe that the only way to survive.
Or they've given up. I think apathy.
I talked to a dear friend.
Yeah.
I talked to a dear friend just this last week who has literally been through utter hell because of how weaponized the judicial system in Oregon is, and he was like, I can't afford to move. And I'm like, you can't afford not to.
Can't.
Like what are you talking about? You can't afford to move. Like you don't want to downsize. You don't want to live, like what Ramsey says.
Sacrificially.
Ramsey says, you don't want to live like no one else. And one day you can live like no one else, right? Like the bottom line of it is, if you're willing to stay, I mean, unless God has just straight up called you.
That's different. That trumps. It's like the trump card. When you're playing spades and you pull out a trump card, the trump card is always that the Holy Spirit, that God has told you to be where you are and do what you're doing. Because short of that, don't stay.
Don't you dare, thus saith the Lord, if the Lord hath not said. Like, don't be like, oh, the Lord's called me to say, no, you're lazy and you're afraid.
Well, afraid. Yeah.
And
it is a spirit of fear.
Well, it's just
because it sucks to move.
Pack all this stuff,
it does. It sucks.
I know it's hard.
It's awful.
It's hard. It's hard. Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
And
well, and if you've waited till now, it may be too late. Yes. Which means you're going to have to compromise, and I don't like compromise.
Right.
It's not fun. It's not good, and I mean, if you chewed the Kool-Aid and bought the Prius, I don't know. It's not like you're going to hell or anything like that. We're not saying that you're not going to hell because you drive a Prius, but you might be one of those that is just not going to be sticking around, and you're not going to be an effective fighter in the fight that's coming. So what's the minimum level of preparedness, and what's the minimum level of self-defense competency? You've heard it here. You need to be able to engage multiple targets while they're moving. You need to be able to cover the longest distances inside your house or dwelling or workplace, because when your loved one is being held up as a human shield, you're really going to wish that you knew how to put big holes in the right places that make the threat stop instantly, reliably, within 3 inches of your loved one's head. You're going to wish that you knew how to do that. You're going to wish that you had a tool capable of doing that. It's very possible that your $300 Gucci Glock isn't capable of the accuracy to do it, or that you're not capable of operating it to do it, or the round that you have is not capable because you've compromised and you're shooting a 380 or a 22 long rifle. And now you really need it to penetrate that T-zone for an instant kill, and you're not able to do it because you're not carrying the right tools.
Exactly.
So those are the things you need to think about. And the other thing I would mention is we go back to food, water, electricity. If you're not paying attention, has anybody paid attention to the Ring of Fire and the earthquakes that are happening? 7.9 in where was it? Well, it was 7 point something. I think it was 7.6 or 7.4 down in Mexico City. There was another. There was another pushing 8, like 7.9 in somewhere next to nowhere in Mexico. Onto the other side, I think it was Thailand, but I could be incorrect there. It was somewhere close to or in Thailand, and they had a 7.9, bunch of buildings collapse. It was just yesterday. I was watching a bunch of footage of it. Alaska's had some smaller ones. Mexico had a 5.3 aftershock that hit a town pretty hard. I've been spreading around. The Alaska Earthquake Center has been telling all of us in Alaska, hey, prepare, not just we're due, but the whole, it kind of hits on one side of the globe, and then there's a reverb, and it comes back and it hits on the other side, and then it goes back and forth. And that's kind of how these work, this type of earthquake. Prepare, put some water away. So we've got a bunch of water jugs, but we've not got them filled because we've just not, we moved and we haven't filled them since. So I do have 100 gallons sitting in my coach of purified drinking water that I can drink, and 100 gallons goes over a long time. But I live in a new location.
But that's going to change. That's going to change in a few months. When winter comes, you're going to have to drain that.
It's going to change this weekend. It's going to change this weekend.
You're not going to leave 100 gallons in your coach, when the weather comes. And that's this is a really good topic. Is like your preps have to change based on
The weather, the
of
season,
year
the
it's at.
threat, an
My
earthquake.
get home bag changes
Oh, yeah.
based on what time of year it is. You know, moving from fall into winter time, you know, or summer into fall, you know, it's time to put that rain gear back in. It's time to, you know, make sure that you've got good boots in the truck, you know, in case you get stuck in the snow. You know,
it becomes more of a shelter in place for 3 to 4 days till someone can get to you versus I'll try to walk this.
Right.
Depending on the type of year, because, you know, time and time again, when it's sub-zero, you're just not walking through it. You only have 3 to 4 hours of the day when you can actually reasonably travel. The going is slow. Like and so you start to think, should I take that trip 1,800 miles from my home?
Right.
Should I accept work? Think about all the post-apocalyptic books that you read that start with the premise of they were prepped for everything, they were ready for anything, they had all the training and they had all the stuff, but I didn't prep for my daughter being away at college or for me being away at work. 3 states over, right? And it makes for a good book to have to transition on foot or horse or whatever across multiple states. Right. Man, you don't want to be in that position. You need to strongly consider in times of strife and in times where there are anticipated civil unrest, as in around election times coming up, do not be far from where you need to be when things go bad.
Oh, yeah, 100%. No, I think that's
election time is not a good time to take your Mexican vacation.
No.
Of course, if you're vacationing in Mexico these days, you're not watching us anyway.
Yeah, no joke. Election time, you know, especially this year, election time. I mean, I wouldn't be taking this trip out of state that I'm on right now. You know, in November, forget it. No way.
We didn't say anything about you traveling.
I'm not going anywhere near St. Louis. You know, I'm not going anywhere near. You know, I'm not crossing out of a free state into a leftist state during that time of year.
Well, you know, after the election, they're going to be looking for cases again to go after Christians and 2A supporters and anybody who is a extreme terrorist like a conservative Republican or conservative Christian. You are absolutely on the terror watch list.
For sure. Right. That's exactly. Well, they've already told us.
They've told us. And they've ran over 2 of us, and they're not being held accountable for it.
Militia, violent extremists. That's what they branded everybody who is, you know,
doesn't agree with them.
The right side.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't expressly agree with and validate everything that they say.
Because if you don't vote for Biden, you ain't black.
That's true too.
Yeah.
No, I think that folks, if you're still with us, if you're still listening, you haven't completely written this off. Here's the story. I don't want you to cower in fear. I don't want you to hide under your bed. I don't want you. It's better to be prepared than afraid. And you know, I mean, today was our second day, and we've got one more day of this round of chicken butchering. You know, where we're butchering, you know, about 45 chickens, and you know, all told, we're gonna have a bunch of chickens butchered, and then I've got 50 more on the uptake that are coming out of the brooder next week and going out into the chicken tractor. You know, stacking a freezer. Like I love the fact that right now we're filling the 4th freezer, you know, coming into the season of insanity. You know, now you got to be able to answer all the questions of can you keep those freezers going, yada yada yada. You know, those are all great questions. Okay, you know, but you know, you might have to just bust open the pressure canner and just start putting food in jars too.
Yeah, don't panic. It's because you lose electricity. One, you have days. Especially, you have days. In Alaska, you have months. If you can't eat your way through it, don't rule out bartering. But two, there are so many ways to prepare your frozen goods permanently. Dry them, can them, smoke them. There are tons of ways. And just because you didn't get to it, I've got tons and tons of jars because I don't have time to can most of the summer, and the plan is in the winter.
But you got 'em.
To do it. And, you can over a campfire. I take a pressure pot with me, a small one. When I camp, I have one that lives in my coach. We do it all the time. You can absolutely get up to pressure and do it. And there are other methods that don't require pressure canning. There's lots of ways to preserve them. But the one thing that is difficult to do once you're at that point is it's hard to buy the books. It's hard to learn the methods. It's hard to have questions or find out that you don't have a seal or a weight or a something that's appropriate for where you live. That stuff is really hard to figure out when you need it. It's like gardening. Don't wait to start a garden until you are out of food and need food, because you don't just learn how to produce food the first time. Very rarely do you have success in a garden your first, second, and sometimes third year if you're like me.
I love you bringing up gardening. I was hanging out with an old timer today, one of our dear neighbors, and this guy, he was telling me that he has been passionately gardening since 1973. So he hadn't been home from Vietnam for terribly long, and knew that he wanted to be in charge of his own food. So he does his own beef. He does his own garden. He's awesome. And so I will say, his garden is so effective that he's bringing me stuff out of his garden to feed my pigs, because he's like, this stuff isn't quite good enough for us. So here, feed this, turn these vegetables into bacon. And I'm like, yes, sir, happy to help. Going to turn that bucket of vegetables into bacon, so take the time to connect with and get to know your neighbors. Some of them might be incredibly skilled, especially older people, the ones who have seen stuff, have lived through the shit.
Yeah.
Like, go get to know them.
Facilitate. Buy their fertilizer. Help them pull weeds, do the manual labor while you get your kids to come do the manual labor while you learn from them. But facilitate them having abundance of growth so that they can share with you while you do things that they cannot do. That is what mutual assistance is about, and that is what the church is supposed to be about. And if you're if you're in a position where you just don't have those who share your beliefs around you in a formal church, open your eyes to those who perhaps are in the same position. There are a lot of kindred spirits, to use a Avonlea term, kindred spirits who believe similar enough that you're not compromising to work with them, and you need to find them. And here's a clue, though: you're going to have a hard time finding them in centers of indoctrination. You're going to have a hard time finding them where people are wearing diapers over their face and struggling over which pronouns to use. Those are not the places where you're going to find them. You're going to find them in gun stores. You're going to find them in not the Whole Food store. That might actually be the opposite. Feed stores. Your Tractor Supply. Your places like that. When people are buying things that you're trying to buy right now, strike up a conversation. Drop some contact information. Now is a really good time to get some homeschool groups going together. If you're doing the homeschool thing, you need to be meeting with other parents that do it. And it's not, yes, you need to socialize your kids so, they get some of those skills, but you need to know who else believes what you believe where you live, because you're going to have to stand together. And when we all start getting persecuted on a wider scale, when the couple of sheepdogs that are out front get knocked off, you need to know who to band up with and hide out with, and trade goods with.
And I think you have to be prepared for God to tap you on the shoulder and transform you. You might be really, really content being a sheep today. Maybe like, no, I'm really happy with being sheep, man. I like Psalm 19 a lot. You know, I like Psalm 23 a lot.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm really happy. I just want to be led by calm waters, and I want him to prepare a table, before me in the presence of my enemies. Like, I'm really cool with being a sheep. And listen, in times of war, do not be surprised when he drops a supernatural transformation on you and says, yes, today you become sheep. Like, you're a part of the flock. You're still a member of the field. But here are your teeth. Here is your strength. Here is your voice. It's time to go to work now, and do not be surprised when that transformation season happens.
When you feel a changing of heart, one, get into Scripture, get into commune or prayer with God. Start calming yourself to listen, and start writing. Journaling becomes a fantastic way if you're not used to hearing the voice of God. Writing down your thoughts and your feelings while you are conversing and reading is a great way to start to hear from God. So I've done a lot. You've done it. I've done it. We both led a lot of new Christians in how to attune your heart and mind and listen to God and hear from Him. And one of the best ways that we all start with is reading the Word and journaling. So I would implore for you to do that. Maybe we'll talk more about that in the bunker in another context, but now's a good time. And one of the ways that we know how things went down in history is from the personal accounts of those who lived it. So, you never know. A lot of our understanding of what truly happened in the previous War of the States, prior to the one we're in now, is that we have a lot of surviving journals and letters and thoughts and pleas and accounts from how that went down and what they felt and what was happening and what oppressiveness was coming from government and what those in power who were led by evil, the decisions that they were making and how they were affecting things. And it's how we learned a whole lot of what sort of goods and things become scarce and what does it take to survive when the battleground is in your front yard, and what does it take when the basic things, the milkman's not coming around and delivering milk, the normal services, the grocery store is not open, right? Some of that happened then also. And how did people get by, and what did they do? Those are things to be thinking about right now. But the biggest takeaway that I would say is what you say all the time, and I don't love it. You get there by making friends, making the right friends. You get there by sharing. You get there by sharing some sauerkraut and having some salsa shared back with you. Some amazing, awesome salsa that we got today.
Yeah. You got some? Oh, that's cool. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you. So, supporter of the show. Appreciate it.
Good.
So anyway, with that, let's do final thoughts and wrap this up. We need to try to, I have a couple things to do for our Patreon paid supporters. We want to love on them for just a couple of minutes before we lose you to cell phone reception and me to energy. But
Yep.
final thoughts for this week, things happening this week, things to be looking out for. I'm trying to remember. I had a couple. There's a lot happening right now, and there's a lot coming to happen. Things are going to continue to ramp up until elections, but we had a warning last week from a YouTube watcher. He mentioned September 24th. That's tomorrow. You and I talked off air about what some of that could be. There are multiple things that it actually could be. There was another a supporter who caught me this week and explained who the German contact was who said it, and I've of course already forgotten. But it's I mean, I don't know. You and I don't like to call out dates. I don't like to make predictions. I would just say be generally prepared and listen to your heart. Let's not fall prey and victim. Let's not get caught up in the trap of screaming from the rafters that the sky is falling every week and every day. Things are progressively getting worse, which is not to say the pace of that cannot change quickly. And on a small localized scale or an individual scale for you, it absolutely can happen instantly and quickly. Stuff can go from not great to absolutely intolerable. They certainly did for someone who was getting ready to spend some serious federal time, an unlawful prosecution of something completely. Oh, I knew it was. It's the solvent trap guy.
Solvent trap guy. Yep.
The guy who was doing something completely legal, not against the law, but that didn't matter to the federal judge. He shot himself rather than go to federal prison.
There you go.
He was found guilty, and the night before his sentencing hearing, killed himself.
Yep.
So they're hunting you down in the streets. They're hunting you down in the courts. Your life can go from tolerable to not tolerable instantly. Just because it's a slow boil for the rest of the world doesn't mean it's not instant for you. And the best thing to do is to just be prepared for the worst.
Yeah.
You can always hope for the best, but if you're not prepared for it, you can't suddenly become prepared.
It's like Jack Carr says in every one of his books, hope is not a strategy. Hope is not a plan.
It's definitely, it's a bad plan. Hopes and dreams are just not going to get it done.
In part of my final thoughts, I'll just say this.
Go ahead.
I had a really great conversation today. Well, it was a terrible conversation, but I had a really great interaction with our postal carrier today. We were out butchering chickens, and he came driving up to drop off some stuff, and I just said, he was jokingly asking if if we were going to be fulfilling his fried chicken order, so I said, well, let me go get you a chicken, so I went and grabbed one of the frozen, or my nephew ran to get one of the frozen chickens, and we gave him one as a gift, and we started chatting, and I asked him to, I said, hey, how truthful do you think, and you have permission to tell me to pound sand, and none of my business, but how truthful do you think it is that the rumors I'm hearing about a possible postal strike around Christmas time? And he just he shrugged his shoulders, and he got real quiet.
You're not supposed to talk about it.
He says, well, we're our local office is really hoping that we don't. He said, but if the union pushes hard enough, it's definitely on the table, and it's a real possibility that you should be aware of, that around the holiday season, that is the time of year. And the way he unpacked it, it's an ethical issue. The way they were getting their faces kicked in this time last year, working 10, 12, 13 hours a day, and only getting paid for 8. And Scripture says that the worker's worth his wages, and the bottom line of it is, they were not. I mean, postal mail carriers get paid pretty well, but if they're supposed to be making X per hour, and they're getting shorted, 4 or 5 of those hours. I totally understand where they're coming from, and there's a real chance. We talked about it last week on the show, but this week I have firsthand intel that he was like, it is a real possibility. We're hoping that doesn't happen, but it's a real possibility. So just be advised, you guys. Like, I know Amazon's doing a lot of their own ordering, a lot of their own order fulfillment. We're getting a lot of random people driving up to the house with a blue vest on, and an absolute hoopty, delivering packages, which stresses me out.
Well, that happening with UPS is why UPS is striking.
Yes, absolutely. So be advised. There's going to be a lot of people, putting eyes on your property. That
Right.
rather than just your local. Back in the day, you had a UPS driver, a FedEx driver, and a postal carrier. Right? You had 3 people that were seeing your place, when you got packages.
Yeah.
Now I have literally seen
See a different guy every time.
Amazon delivery driver. Every time they've come in the last 2 weeks, it's been a different driver.
Yep.
So that's why
it's like Uber when it comes to Amazon.
Yes.
And that has not reached Alaska, but that's a lesser 49 thing. But yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So please be advised. If there's something that that you're not going to be able to live without for Christmas, whatever. I don't really know what living like that looks like, but just make sure that you're making provisions to get those things.
If you need winter boots for your children, buy them now. And whatever size you think your children are going to need next spring, buy them now. That's the stuff. I think we talked about that a while back. I've got the next 2 years of my son's footwear because he born with a club foot. His foot is hard to, only certain shoes fit. I have just bought all the sizes for several years moving forward because, factories stopped making shoes in China, and Californians make stupid rules that don't let the boat get unloaded. And they outlaw, trucks that are older than 10 years old and don't meet their latest requirements. And pretty soon they're outlawing everything that burns fossil fuels. So, the reality is the supply chain issues are not going away. They're only going to get worse. The cost is only going to get worse. And unions are in their dying throes. They know that they are threatened. People are starting to not understand why we need them anymore. They're getting called out for their illegal bullying tactics. They're being held responsible by their members for having given all that money to all those evil people in political power. And they don't like being held accountable. And they're fighting for their lives. And, unions, just like, the trades and the unions and the universities and you name it, are all being politically manipulated to be weaponized against our country. And if you just can't see it, I don't understand what it's going to take for you to see it.
Well, if you can't see it, it's because the God of the universe is blinding the sight of people. I mean, this is. Please understand that Jesus is not falling off the throne in heaven, going, "Oh my goodness, what am I going to do with America?"
Well,
no. This is fully expected. We're going to fall as a country. There is no mention of of America in the Book of Revelation, right? There's no letter to the Church of Kentucky. There's no letter to the church in Oregon.
And that's not to say that all of us here are just vaporized and don't exist.
No, we're gonna have to struggle. We're gonna have to struggle through it until Jesus comes back.
Yeah.
But and I don't care whether you're pre, mid, post, trib.
Doesn't matter.
None of that matters to me. Doesn't matter to me. There's gonna be a lot of tribulation before the great tribulation.
Right.
So I don't even care I've said it before. I'll say it again. I'm on the welcoming committee, not the planning committee. But
but I think, if you call yourself a Christ follower, do you really feel called to be a leech?
Right.
Do you feel called to be a liability to your friends, family, and neighbor? Or do you feel called to be a witness, as we are called, to be an asset, somebody who brings value to a situation?
Right. Yeah.
All you need as a baby steps of value is to learn some basic concepts, buy some basic paper books, and put a couple of things into your pantry. And you stop being a liability and start moving more towards the asset column. And that's all we're saying. Sure. Open your eyes, put a little bit of food away, be able to protect yourself so people don't have to risk their lives to protect you. Be part of the solution, not the problem. And call out evil where we see it.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. I think that's a great place to end. I think that's it for the show. Yeah. So we're coming up on, we've almost live streamed for 2 hours. We're right about an hour and 50 minutes, which is a long main segment for us. If you, wherever you're watching this, so if you're watching this on the Book of Faces, that means you're already in the club. Feel free to share it if you want or not. I don't care what you do on Facebook. But come find us maybe on YouTube and do a like, subscribe over there. More and more, we probably will be on YouTube more and more. YouTube's actually less likely to dump us than Facebook these days. We will be on, we have a presence on Getter. We have a presence on MeWe. We're not streaming to either of those places yet. What was the other one? So Truth Social's out there now. I don't know if we're going to do that one or not. They are actually letting everybody in now. What's the other one?
Oh, they are?
Yeah. So
Telegraph.
I'm on all those. Yeah, Signal and Telegraph, but those are not platforms where you stream to. They're other ways to instant message your friends and have group text. So that's all those are. But anyways, you can find us on those places. I usually cross-post some of our previous stuff there. But if you really want to be totally involved, we are on Patreon, at least for now. We will continue to explore other avenues. There's going to be better places than Patreon. But right now, Patreon took it in the short so bad for their persecution of conservatives and the 2A community that they're actually leaving everybody alone right now. It's not a lot of money, but $3 a month gets you access to the private third segment bunker. We call it the bunker. What it is,
we say more cursies. We say more cursies in the bunker. So if you're into that, like if you like to listen to pastors, like,
well, we do
drop the F-bomb.
We do when we drop more than that, we drop our everyday carry. Every time we get into the bunker, we drop our everyday carry. You get to see the guns, knives, whatever things that are on our person, around our person. I've got a new pew to show off in the bunker today.
I don't even get to see it.
Yep, you'll have to get into the Patreon and look at it there. But it's the way to interact with us. If we have a Patreon member who asks us a question or wants research in something or wants advice in something, they absolutely get our 100% focus. We do what we can for the public segments, and that's fine, especially, as the venerable Rush Limbaugh used to say, if I can make you entertaining, you can be on the show.
There you go.
So that works. But if there are no, I won't say there are no stupid questions. There's lots of stupid questions, but you will absolutely get answers to your stupid questions on Patreon. And it's not very much money.
We might tell you that you're stupid.
Well, I might say it's a stupid question, but here's the answer. $3 a month. We won't ridicule you. We'll laugh with you. So thank you for joining this segment, the public segment of the show. We appreciate you. If you want to do the like and the subscribe, go ahead. The big thing is, if you don't see us here, go find us somewhere else. It's time to start following us on Getter and MeWe and some of the other places. Rumble, I think we're on Rumble. Because once we do get eliminated from these platforms, we'll finally figure out how to be there. But
all right, you guys,
join us in the bunker.
You guys have a great, get prepped.
Yeah, if it's not too late.